Welcome to the Opt-In Podcast. I am Melissa Franks, your host, and this is the podcast where we go from surviving to thriving inside of business. I am a 25 plus year corporate employee turned entrepreneur who wants to spill all of the tea, give you all of the juice, tell you all of the tips and tricks to survive in today's business landscape. I have a strong point of view that we onboard employees and teach them HR policies and give them company handbooks and never, ever explain to them how things actually work on the inside. So the purpose of this podcast is to dispel myths and take you along on the realistic journey of what it takes to have a career that you love and a life that you want to live. This week, I am responding to questions from all of you. You are wonderful with liking and commenting on the 1-minute clips that I throw out there into the world, and I use those mostly so that I can articulate to you kind of the little teeny tiny coaching snippets that you need to keep it moving and do what you want to do. But the reality is that 1 minute is just, it's not enough, friends. And so this podcast here serves to be your long form way to get that coaching. And if you so desire, come join me over on YouTube. Soon, new content is going to be launching over there, but there's plenty for you to catch up on now if that's what you want to do. Give that channel some love. I could use some more followers so we can monetize that baby and get some really good video editing in there for you to enjoy those videos and more of them. So this week, like I said, I'm answering your questions, and we are going to start right off at the top with a really interesting one. The question came in and it was, how do I get a market rate salary adjustment? So for those of you that don't know what a market rate salary adjustment is, it's, hey, we've looked out in the market and I'm getting paid significantly below the market, and I think that you need to bump me up so it's competitive. And this is a really interesting topic because employees, so those of us that get paychecks, are constantly talking about what we're worth out in the open market. And on the flip side, businesses never talk about it. Never. In fact, the truth is that the only time market rate comes up is when somebody inside of the business is trying to hire for a position and the salary range is shared with potential candidates, and the candidates say it's too low, it's too low, it's too low. And then eventually recruiters get people in for interviews that are saying it's the right price, and the hiring managers are saying they're not the right people. They don't have the right skills. They're not senior enough. They don't have the expertise or the work experience that I need. And then there just becomes this challenge where the role is priced too low, where in order to capture the talent necessary to fulfill the obligations and responsibilities of the role, the market rate, the salary increase needs to go up. That's when this comes up. That's when there is a push and pull between leadership and the compensation team to say, hey, the way that we're doing this is no longer competitive and we need to make a change. It doesn't come up when employees are running out the door to go double their salaries at other companies. It's talked about, it's not addressed when that happens. So dispelled myth number 1. The second thing that I want to point out is how companies use market data. Once you get to an organization that is big enough, and by big enough, it really, really, really depends on the sort of business that you're in. But usually, by the time the business has hit 75 or 100 million on up, there are some human resources or people, professionals in the business, and they understand how to build compensation plans across the board. When you have that structure in place, what those professionals do is they go out to third parties whose sole job in the world is to collect information about the various jobs that are available and what the compensation package looks like, how much people are getting paid in base salary, how much bonus they're getting, what perks they have, do they have healthcare, do they have a 401k, etc. These third-party companies, their sole responsibility is to create benchmarks around the roles so that a company, my business, could go to this benchmarking company and say, hey, I need to hire 6 financial analysts. 3 of them are going to be senior and 3 of them are going to be junior, and they're going to be in Akron, Ohio. What's the salary range for those positions? And these benchmarking companies can say, well, based on your location in Akron, Ohio, and based upon your requirements for these 2 roles and the grade or the level that you have them at, this is how much at the bottom and at the top each of the roles should be getting paid. And that's how they come up with the benchmarks. And then what the HR professionals do is they go back into the company and they say, okay, so now we have a junior finance analyst and we have a senior finance analyst, and the junior finance analyst makes $60,000 to $100,000 and the senior makes $80K to $120K. And voila, they have their pay bands, and then they post the jobs and they go out and they hire people for those roles. And then that's how those pay bands are used. And further to that, that information is then used when annual merit increases are determined. So if the junior financial analyst pay band was $60K to $100K, then as long as all of the employees inside of the company are inside of that pay band, everything is cool. Everything is fine. Now, let's say that the company decides to hire a bunch of people at $100,000. Well, those people probably aren't getting raises year over year because that's the ceiling. They can't make any more money. Let's say that there is a ton of noise. They're trying to hire more junior analysts, and there is a ton of noise that the pay band, they can't hire anybody within the range because the company's position is that we hire them at the 50% mark, which would be $80,000, and nobody is willing to play ball at $80,000. So the company can go back out and do the benchmarking analysis again. And then maybe what they find is that things have shifted, and where it used to be 60 to 100K, it's now 80 to 120. Which means that also that senior role needs to be adjusted as well. So let's say then that they make that adjustment and they hire some new employees in following that same logic. So they're coming in around $100,000, except now you've got those 3 existing employees that maybe they were hired way down at the 80K mark, which was the original target. Or maybe they were hired at 70K and they're below the benchmark. And so what they will do is then they'll do a market rate adjustment for those individuals to get them to the bottom. So if the 3 junior analysts that came into the company under the old pay band were all making $70,000 and a new pay band was created starting at $80,000, what will happen is that over the course of time, there will be an assessment done during budgeting, and then they will determine how much money they will budget year over year to help those people move from 70 to 80. They will not, in one lump sum, move all 3 of those people from 70 to 80. They might move them from 70 to 73, and then from 73 to 77, and then from 77 to 80. So over a 3-year span, they may move them to 80, but they won't do a lion's jump. That is how market information is used inside of a company. How it is not used is to assess the people that are inside of the pay band and determine if they should be getting a greater increase or not. So the first thing that you need to do when you're thinking about asking for salary, a market salary adjustment, is you need to understand, at least at a minimum, how that works. And so you can ask some questions specifically of HR around, do we have pay bands? How do we update those? How often do they change? How often do they get updated? Just like general mechanics around how it works. You may get an answer of, we don't have pay bands. You may get an answer of, we haven't updated them since 1985. You may get a lot of those answers. Pay bands are not updated very often. Going back out and doing market benchmarking and adjusting them all is like a once in a decade sort of situation. It really does not happen very often because it's a lot of work and there's a lot of expense associated with it because the majority of long-term employees are outside of the old pay bands, let alone the new pay bands. So companies don't like to do this work. But ask some questions, find out if you have pay bands, etc. For the companies that do have a process for this, it will be a little more difficult for you to negotiate an increase. So here's my guidance around that. You asked this question because you have already gone out into the market and you have looked at Glassdoor, salary.com, or LinkedIn or whatever and said, I'm getting underpaid. You would have never asked this question if you didn't make an assumption based on the information that you'd gathered that you're being underpaid. You also, in your head, know what number you're being underpaid. Now, I'm going to tell you to take that number with an incredibly large grain of salt, maybe multiple grains of salt, because most of the publicly available data, even if it's behind a paywall or even if you have to create an account to see it, is self-reported. So people can inflate their salaries. People can inflate their bonuses. People can just blatantly put the wrong information in. Some people do it to try to force the hand of the company to increase their pay bands. There's all sorts of crazy things that go on. So you really need to do your diligence and your research. If it looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So spend some time being very, very diligent. One of the places that you can trust to a certain extent a little bit more are places like New York City, where by law they have to post the salary. So if you're really trying to do some research, go find those states or cities where it's required by law that the salaries are posted with the job postings. Go find the job that you have, go find the posting, and then you can start to see some comparable information. So do your research, which it sounds like you probably have already done because you wouldn't have asked the question if you didn't, and then make sure that you double check it, triple check it, quadruple check it, okay? And then, because you asked this question, my gut says that you came back and you said, I should be making 25% more or 50% more or something along those lines. So the next thing that I need to tell you is that you will not get a 25% or 50% market salary adjustment. They will not increase your salary that much for doing the same job that you're doing now. It just doesn't happen. Should it? I don't know. We could debate that all day long. It's just a fact of the matter. It's not going to happen. So the next thing that you need to do is you need to understand what your company's threshold is for salary adjustments without a promotion. Is the max they'll ever do 5%? Is the max they'll ever do 7%? And that is, you're going to have to do your research. You're going to have to ask around. Don't ask for dollars because most companies have a policy around sharing salary information, but you can say, so like hey, you've been here for 15 years. Do you know on average what salary adjustments look like? Are they 2%, 5%, 7%? Those things you can talk about. Those things are not against policy. Those things you can share information around. Do your research and your homework. My guess is that most businesses on average will provide 2% as a merit increase. And the really, really big increases that are kind of once in a lifetime are 7%. And then they kind of reserve 10% for promotions. That's generally the standard, but you may find some outliers and some different things. So then once you know that, and you understand that the market is pricing things at a significantly higher price, the next thing that you need to do is consider how much easier your job is at your current place of business versus going and starting a new job. Because one of the reasons that the market rate is so much higher is because it's harder to do the job that you're doing now at a brand new company. Why is it harder? Because you don't have the network, you don't have the resources, you don't have the understanding of how the company works. You don't know the ins and outs. You don't know all of the things about the business. The job that you're doing today is much, much easier because of the time you have spent inside of your company. If you take that same job and you move it to another company, the job just is harder. So you're getting paid a little bit more because of the complexity level. So that's the next thing to consider. So if you're saying that the market rate is 25% higher than your market rate, well, you probably need to take like 15% of that off because it's harder to go work at a new company. I'm making this up, guys. So then once you kind of understand that and you've decided that you want to ask for a salary increase, what you also need to know is when the budget process happens. Because the budget for pay increases happens annually during the budgeting process. And that pot is well known and well established and well distributed, and that's what you are trying to get a piece of. So if you want to raise this year, you should have asked last year, is basically the rule of thumb. So when you go to your manager and you articulate all of the information and you communicate, and make sure that you give them things that they can take to the person that actually makes a decision, because your manager likely is not the final decision maker. Make sure that they have kind of a case and a set of information they can take forward too. The last thing that you are going to want to do is make sure that they understand that you're patient, that you're not asking for it to show up in your next paycheck. You're not asking for it to show up in a paycheck this year, that you're understanding how the cycles work, and that you wanted to bring to their radar right now your expectations and the information that you had, and ask for their help so that there can be something different for you next year. That is the best way to ask for a market salary adjustment. Otherwise, you need to leave. If you really think you're grossly being underpaid and you want 25 or 50% increase, you have to go to another company. You're not going to get it inside of the business that you're working in, no matter how small or how large. It just won't happen. Nobody's going to double your income. Nobody. Okay, so the next one is my boss and I don't get along. What do I do? Oh, friends. This is normal. It is normal. So you're not going to get along with people in your life. You're not going to get along with family members. You're not going to get along with neighbors. You're not going to get along with people that you had in groups at school or on sports teams. And you're most definitely not going to get along with a boss or two during the 40 plus years that you work. Now, there are lots of people who do not get along with their boss, and they're highly successful and productive, and they work together for years, if not decades. Again, like the prior question, I think if you're asking this, it means that things are a bit contentious. And so I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to give you a story, and then we'll kind of talk through what your options are. So early on in my career, holy smokes, super early. I want to say I was probably 2 years out of college, maybe. So I was in the corporate world for 4 years, but I was maybe 2 years out of college. I had a boss that I loved. He was fantastic. He was such a good mentor and so helpful, and our team was amazing. Everybody worked well together. Like, things were just like so good. And then, like, the analogy I give is the snow globe was shook up. He left the company. A bunch of people went to other departments. Like, all of a sudden, all of us individual contributors were still there, but like kind of the leadership of the team had changed dramatically. And I got a new manager, and it was somebody from the outside. Like, not the outside of the company, but was not a part of like the corporate family that we all had. And I probably would have been okay with somebody getting promoted kind of up and over, but this person came from a completely different place. And while it had industry expertise, had no expertise in the function that we were building and running. And so I knew all of this coming ahead of meeting the person. And then I met the person, and we could not have been more different. And from the moment that she walked into the office, I'm like, this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well. Like, she did not fit into the team as a whole. The decisions that she made didn't make any sense. She clearly did not understand what we were trying to achieve from a work perspective. And just personally, we were polar opposites. She was super disorganized. She had like one of those offices where you walked in and there were stacks of paper everywhere. And then she would say like, hold on, I know where it is, and like shuffle through all of the stacks and sometimes find it, sometimes not. Her personal hygiene habits were misaligned to mine. That's all I'm going to say about that. But you name it, and we were not made to work together. Now, here is the thing. I was misguided and thought that if I leveraged my network and my relationships, because I was highly connected to senior leadership, that I could influence a different decision being made, that I could get a different boss, that I could have something different happen. So slowly I started to work those things, and slowly I would point out where mistakes were made and where bad decisions were called. And I was kind of working in the underground. And then annual performance review came around and I got an above target. And if you have been here for a minute, you know that I am a high performer, that I was a straight A student, graduated college in 4 years. Like I was not at target. I've always been an above target. And I was furious, so angry. And that was it. I like filed a complaint with HR, went to everybody, like full court press around this was discrimination and this was wrong and she's like retaliating, like you name it. I pulled out all of the stops. We had a plenty of friction leading up into that point. And I just felt like she was taking it out on me. Well, I was told to suck it up and deal with it. Long story short, HR investigated, didn't find any grounds, and it completely destroyed our relationship. There was like no turning back. Things got even worse. And I was the one that was getting reprimanded. I was the one that was getting told to get along. I was the one that was getting coached and mentored. And maybe it was because I was the younger one. I'm not sure. She did some pretty shady, nasty stuff too. I don't know what happened there. But what I will tell you is that as soon as there was an opportunity to go somewhere else, I said yes without even thinking. And then I spent the most miserable 9 months of my life in finance. Yep. I left a team I loved, work I loved, stuff I was so good at, and I literally ran down the hall with my laptop and plopped myself into the middle of the finance department. And I worked there for 9 months until, thank God, I got rescued by the technology team. But it was freaking miserable. So I went from like one fire into another just for two different reasons. All of that to say that I created the shitstorm. I took a bad situation where we did not get along. We were not going to be friends. I was not going to be hanging out with her. I literally didn't even want to be in her office because it was difficult for me to breathe in there, let alone think. I took a really bad situation and I poured gasoline on the fire, and I made it so much worse because I didn't find a way to work with her. I just went on a mission to get rid of her. Now, hindsight being 2020, and the way that I'm going to coach you right now, and the way that I'm going to coach everybody else, is that the best thing that you can do for your professional reputation is to take the high road. Always. Always. Even if your boss is not. So focus on the work. Offer to help. Remove yourself from conflict. Because the thing is that everybody is watching. Everybody knows you guys don't get along. You may not have said a single word to anybody, but they know that you do not get along. Everybody is watching. They're like, ooh, pop me some popcorn. They're about to go at it. Give it to me now, right? They can see the body language, even through Zoom. They can feel the tension. They can read the undercurrents in the email. They know that you do not like each other, that you are not getting along. So the best thing that you can do is to reverse that and to take the high road. And that will demonstrate to leaders, that will demonstrate to your peers, that will demonstrate to people in other departments that you can manage conflict, that you can manage difficult personalities, that you are professional and it's about the work, and that you don't stoop too low. If your manager is not also taking a parallel high road, all it's going to do is continue to highlight their bad behavior, and it will take care of itself. I know this is easier said than done, but I have been there, and I made the wrong choice. I didn't choose the high road, and it was really, really stupid. So I am telling you right now, take the high road. I fast forward to recent past, and I had yet another situation where I was working for somebody and things were as toxic can be. Now, I was in a leadership role, so things were a little bit different. But I had to make a decision about staying and taking the high road and doing the right thing and working the process and all of the things, or to just leave. And it was really tempting to just leave. It was really, really tempting to just leave. And I remember I flashed back to that 22-year-old version of me that literally ran down the hall. I wish you guys could see the inside of the building, because I ran down the hallway and around. Anyway, I ran down the hall to my new role, and I thought, well, I could do it again. And then I remembered how miserable I was when I ran and how much I regretted the running. And so I didn't. I stayed and I followed the process and dealt with the aftermath. But what my team saw and what my peers saw and what other leaders saw and what I know about myself even to this day, looking back on that situation, is that in those moments of stress and strife and challenge and conflict and toxicity, I rose above it and I was a true leader. And the image of being a leader, the representation of being a leader, the example of being a leader for my people is what makes the next generation of great leaders. So it's worth it. The payoff is worth it to take the high road until you can find the next path that continues to lead you upward. The next question that we have here is, I hate my job, but I don't want to start over and learn something new. Yep, been there. And it's scary. It's scary to have a profession and a career, and maybe even work at a specific company and then realize one day, I don't enjoy this, and it's time to move on. And it can seem like the risk is too great. So here's what I'm going to say to you about this. You're not actually starting over. You're not. The only exception to that is if you are a certified public accountant now and you want to become a doctor. If that's the situation that you're in, then there's some starting over that has to happen. But if you are a finance professional and you want to work in technology, you're not starting over. If you are a retail expert and you want to go work in healthcare, you're not starting over. The reason that you're not starting over is because you have X amount of work experience years. Maybe you have 5 years, maybe you have 10, maybe you have 15, but all of these years that you have been working, you have been collecting experience, you have been collecting skills, you have been refining your expertise, and that nobody can take away from you. So sure, maybe you don't know anything about the industry of healthcare, but you do know lots of things about the sort of role that you would have in the healthcare industry. So if we just take an example, let's say you're a financial analyst in a retail company and you want to move into the healthcare space as a financial analyst. Well, guess what? You know how to analyze data. You know how to build reports and graphs. You know how to collect information. You know how to make sure that everything is completely accurate down to the penny. You know how to do all of those things. So while you may not know what widgets you need to count in healthcare yet, because you only know the widgets that are counted in retail, somebody just has to tell you. You just have to learn that one time. That's like opening a book or watching a YouTube video. but the 15 years of experience you have refining your ability to analyze and see patterns and find problems and make minute tweaks that are going to inform business strategy for the next 5 years, you still have all that expertise. You just want to apply it to something new. See, we fail to recognize how much skill and knowledge and know-how we have that has nothing to do with the job title or the industry that we work in. I specifically, if you think about me and what I do, I can take strategy, big visionary strategy, and transform it into minute tactical execution tasks. I can take that we want to save the world vision and say, we're going to save it by tying our shoes on Tuesday, right? But what I say to people is, I know how to solve problems. That's why you want to hire me. I know how to solve problems. And the value of me knowing how to solve problems is that you can focus on the things that are going to grow your business. As a consultant, this is something I say over and over and over again. It's why I'm able to work inside of an early stage software as a service startup company. It's why I'm able to work in a mature stage internet business. It is why I am able to grow exponentially a direct sales team in under a month, because I know how to solve problems. Because when something hits my desk and I say, we got it, we will figure this out. You leader, go worry about the big, great stuff. I'll make sure that we are doing all the things we need to do here to support you. I have the ability to do that and say that and do it in a reputable way because I have 25 years of experience doing it. Do I have 15 years of insurance expertise? Heck yeah. Can I read an insurance policy and tell you if a quote is BS? Also, yes. But what I have 25 years of doing is creating problem solving, of getting shit done, of executing, of delivering results across a variety of dimensions and functions and teams and industries. So you're not starting over from zero. You may be making a big shift. You may be going from industry A to industry B or department A to department B. But what you know how to do, the work that you do, that expertise and that skill set doesn't go anywhere. You carry it with you, which means you're not starting at ground zero. So to close out that loop specifically, I made a shift from retail to insurance early on in my career. And so I had, by the time I left retail, I had 11 years of retail experience. And then I went to insurance. And so in retail, I was a manager on the path to director. I was actually considering a director role. And I went to insurance and I became a senior analyst. So actually a step below my current role in retail and two steps below where I was about to be in retail. And the reason that I took a step down was because I didn't have the industry expertise. But what I will tell you is that in 11 years, I went from a senior analyst to a chief operating officer. Astronomical growth, because I entered as a senior analyst with 11 years of experience. So it wasn't an 11-year career journey from point A to point B to be a COO. It was actually 22. And that specific example is what you need to keep in mind. You may need to take a step back to take an incremental step forward. You may need to take a step back to make a gigantic step forward, whatever it is, whatever your goals are. But that step back is to just give you a minute to understand the new environment so that you can propel yourself even farther than where you were and where you intended to be, because you have all of that experience. So don't devalue all of that time in chair because you want to make a change. You're not going back to the beginning. You're not entering ground floor. Have some confidence in your abilities and spend some time really thinking about all that expertise that you have that has nothing to do with the department or the industry that you work in. So I think that is where we are going to end this today. I have one more question, but I'm going to roll over to next week because I think that one I want to spend some time talking about, and then this podcast will get too long. So if you have questions, please DM me on Instagram at Melissa_Franks, or you can email me, melissa@melissafranks.com. I'm going to do another episode next week where we are answering these questions. And maybe I'll start doing once a month because I get a good amount of questions and a good amount of comments on social out there. And then I cannot address it fast enough because, well, 1 minute is not enough time to give you guys all of the goods. So make sure that you're following me in all of the places so you can get these little snapshots. Make sure you send in your questions so that I can answer them here. And until I see you next time, please know that you are wise and you are strong and you are capable, and I believe in you. Have a wonderful day, friends.